Hey everyone, so I thought I would do a short video showing an edit of one of my photos. One or two people have often asked me what kind of steps I take, so I thought I'd run through a picture I took a couple of years ago up in Norway and previously never did anything with. But it's not a bad photo. It's got this pretty little church and lake and mountains in the distance. And we should be able to get some nice autumn colours in here as well. So I guess let's kick off. So the first thing I would generally do is go down to our lens corrections tab and apply the profile for my lens. In this case I was using the 16 to 35 wide angle zoom, and you saw it sort of pop into shape there. That removes some vignetting from around the edge as well, so always worth doing. Lightroom has profiles for most lenses, and as new lenses come out they tend to then sort of add extra ones. Next thing to do, head back to basic and probably set our white balance. It looks pretty good, but I always like to see how it looks just picking the eyedropper and then clicking something white in the image. So in this case the church, so we can zoom in there, give it a little tap. Didn't really change much, so I think the camera got it fairly close then. We can always tweak this later if we need to. Next thing is probably just to check our white and black levels are okay. It doesn't look like we've got any clipping on the histogram there, but if we hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and then adjust this slider, we can basically move this up and down until we see clipping, drag it back until that just disappears. And there we go. And then we'll do the same for the black. And you'll see if you move it down, obviously a lot of stuff has then gone to complete black. Move it back up until that all disappears. There we go. Once we've done that, we then find that the highlight adjustment works within the range of those whites that we've got. So I think I will drop this down a bit just to bring a little detail back into the clouds there. I'd often raise the shadows on a sort of image with a lot of dynamic range in it, because you might find you've got some very dark areas. This one's actually fairly flat because of the cloudy day, so I don't think we need to be raising those up particularly. It starts to look a bit strange. So we'll leave those where they are for now, but let's add a little bit of contrast in as well. And I think after doing that we can probably then just up the shadows a little bit. Okay. So the other thing I don't really like on this image is all the sort of interesting part of it is in the top half here. The foreground is not particularly interesting. There's no sort of nice path leading into the shot or an interesting shaped rock. So I think this picture would probably suit a slightly more panoramic crop. So I'll often first try 16:9, which is the sort of aspect ratio most monitors or TVs would have. So let's move that so we've got it on the top half of the screen. Hit done. There we go. And I think that looks more balanced, even though normally you wouldn't want to position a horizon right across the middle of the image, which is where this now is. I think with this particular scene it suits it, because we also have the line of the bushes and trees here. That's placed more on a third, and then the top of these mountains in the middle is sort of on the upper third, so I think that kind of works okay. So it's looking okay. We probably want to add a little bit more drama and colour to it though. So the first thing I might try doing, and this is where it starts to get a bit experimental, is just add a gradient filter to darken this sky down a little bit. If you hold down the Shift key before you drag your filter down, it keeps it level, so you don't have to worry about getting the angle spot on. So let's give it a fairly wide gradient there, and instead of having it adding exposure, let's remove it a little bit. And let's also add a little bit of clarity, just to bring the details out in those clouds. There we go. see how that looks. That's looking pretty good. And now we want to probably bring out some of these colours a little bit as well. So let's try adding a bit of vibrancy. And that's not too bad, but they start to look a little too greeny, I would say. So let's see if saturation works a bit better on this. Often saturation sort of pushes things too much, but it does affect different colours differently to the vibrancy option, which tends to only sort of saturate things that are already not too saturated. So that's not looking too bad. Okay, and I'm going to just lighten the overall image a little bit now. There we go. Okay, so the next thing I tend to do with a lot of my images is take them into colour effects to just add one or two of the little filters in there just to give it a little extra something. So if we pass this over into Photoshop, you can launch colour effects directly from within Lightroom. I tend to do it via Photoshop just because then it adds it as another layer, and you can adjust how much you're actually adding to the effect back to the sort of base layer. The other thing I've just spotted on the image is I think there is a bit of a dust spot in the middle here, so let's just zoom in. And yeah, we can see that just there. So if we use the spot healing brush, bring the size of it down a little bit and just paint over that. And that gets rid of that. Okay, and let's bring it into colour effects. And you'll see that's created a second layer there. If you don't already have this software, I definitely recommend getting it. It's got a huge number of filters down the side here, and it's free at the last count, although it's recently been bought after Google discontinued it, so whether it'll remain free is anyone's guess. But anyway, so first thing I might add is the skylight filter. So this tries to simulate one of those sort of UV filters you might have put on your camera back in the olden days. And at a low level, it just adds a nice little bit of extra sort of saturation and colour to everything. If you turn this up, things go quite scarily purple and bright, so I tend to leave it fairly low down there. And we can just turn that off and on to see the effect it's having. As you can see, it's fairly subtle. Pro contrast, that's another one. It sort of works similar to clarity, I guess. When you turn up the dynamic contrast, it tends to boost sort of mid-range details in the image. Again, if you turn it all the way up, that's getting a little bit crazy, but if we just pop it back down here and add a little bit of detail. Sunlight is an interesting one. It works on some images and not others. It tends to add a sort of overall light glow. Let's try it and see. So it gives it a slightly sort of fairy tale feel. I don't really think it suits this particular picture though, so I think I'll probably leave that off for now. The other one I like to use is darken and lighten center. This one's pretty subtle. It works a bit like a vignette, but rather than adding a sort of proper black amount around the corners, it sort of lowers the colours slightly differently. In fact, we can see the difference if we add an actual lens vignette. Turn off darken and lighten center. You'll see to begin with that's a lot darker, but let's just take that up. So down in the corners here, it's pretty grubby looking. So if we do that, it's just more subtle. I tend to prefer it. And like with all of these, we can adjust what sort of level it takes effect at. So we can shrink down the centre, or we can bring it out. I'm going to keep it for this one because the sort of interesting part of the image is actually this little church here on the outcrop in the lake. And by darkening the edges slightly, I think we draw a bit of attention to that. I sometimes like to also add a bit of cross-processing. Again, this has a variety of colour modes that we can add in, some of them better than others. They tend to work quite differently on different images, but I think maybe this one looks kind of interesting. Yeah, okay, I like the effect that's giving us. I do want to just turn this back up. It's darkening it a little too much, I think. Okay, and we'll save that there. And now, as we've got this with layer, we can turn it on and off just to see the difference. So I've not gone too crazy on this. One filter that's often used sort of on autumn scenes, and what I'll do is I'll just bring colour effects back up again. It has a filter called Indian Summer, which tends to make green foliage go quite sort of orange and red. I'm probably not going to keep it on this picture, but I thought I would just show you briefly how it works. So if we tap that, there you go, and you can see it's pretty dramatic, and you can make things go completely red in various levels. And we have a variety of colours we can apply. But like I say, I think on this image it's just way too much. It sometimes works quite effectively, sort of if you've taken a picture in a darkish forest, so there's not really much colour to speak of apart from the leaves, and all the sort of tree trunks are quite dark, and it can look pretty neat then. On this image, especially on this mountain in the middle here, it just, yeah, it looks kind of very strange, so we shall cancel. Right, I'm fairly happy with that, so I think we can now drop that back into Lightroom. And I think I just want to bring it a little bit brighter again. And I think we're probably done. So, fairly quick edit, and I haven't gone too crazy on this one, but it shows how just using a few simple changes and a few simple filters just can change the overall look of the image. So if we go back, that's what we started with, that's the end result, just has a little bit more pop. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon.